Welcome to the Jazz Flyte Podcast. I'm your host, Darrell Scott, and together we will dive into the lives and careers of the jazz legends who have left a rhythmic imprint on the world. Be prepared to reminisce on the highs and the lows of their musical journey and the trials that sculpted their timeless musical gems. We'll preserve the legacy of these extraordinary maestros and find inspiration in the melodies of their lives. Subscribe now and never miss a beat. Now, let's get to the show. It's a new tune from our guest today, Kim Scott. It's called Magic City Streets. Got a bunch of songs that have made number one. It's got about to have her fifth album come out. There's a lot of good things to talk about her. And we're going to get right to it because I believe in giving artists as much time as possible. Kim, welcome to the Jazz Flyte Podcast. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, not a problem. This is going to be interesting because I have another friend, Hubert, who's a flute player who's been on the show. And I'm going to ask, first of all, why did you choose the flute?
Why did I choose the flute? Well, I have to start at the beginning. So I didn't choose the flute initially. I started out on piano and violin because I grew up in a household of musicians. My mother is a trained pianist, and she wanted all of her children to play something. And my mother and father were making records before I was born. They actually had a band called the Dynamic Soul Machine, and they were on Stax Records.
Wow.
So they were out there doing it big. So when the children came along, piano was your first thing, violin was my second thing. And by fifth grade, you start being exposed to extracurriculars in school.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be in the band. So there was a tryout day. You get to go around and look at all the instruments. And I saw the flute. It was petite. It was shiny.
Right.
Smaller than the tuba. So I kind of beelined it. I already knew what it sounded like because, again, we grew up in a musical household. We knew about orchestral instruments and all. And I really liked the sound. So I tried out the flute. And I was one of the very few kids that day who could make a sound on that instrument. So I thought, well, maybe this is for me. And I never looked back. I became completely obsessed with the flute to the point where that's all I wanted to do in every grade level. Even now, that's all I want to do.
Yeah.
I love the instrument. I just want to be the best, best player I can be on that instrument.
So would that be the word now is that your pivot? You go from, say, being a student to go, I'm going to take this instrument, I'm going to perfect it, and I am going to be the best I can at this song music.
That's pretty much how it was, but it happened really early for me. Right. So most kids don't really know what they want to do till high school, early college.
Right.
But about middle school for me, seventh grade or so, I was like, I don't know what it's going to take or what I'll be doing, but I'm going to be playing the flute, whatever it is. I guess I'm going to make money some kind of way.
Right.
But it was the love of the instrument and the love of music that I was most focused on. Not a check or not trying to make a living financially. And that drove me. So my entire trajectory from middle school to high school to college was becoming this great player. I mean, I went to fine art schools in high school where I was already taking lessons with private flute teachers. I was taking music theory and music history and playing with the symphony. And I did that all throughout school because I knew where I wanted to go in the end.
So my friend Herb, who's also a flute player, tells me the story of his beginnings. And it was tough learning the flute because, as the way he put it is, half the air goes into the flute, the other half goes outside of the flute. And he got dizzy many occasions. And did you have to learn how to handle that and your breathing techniques and so forth and so on?
Yeah, I did. I did. I mean, every flutist has to get beyond that. But I had a really, really good band director in elementary school that, set me up with a great foundation. And by the time I got to middle school, the band director I had, who was fabulous, Suzanne Winter, she was actually a flutist.
Hmm.
So that benefited me more than probably some of the other kids in the band because she could really speak to that instrument and what it took to build, endurance and to get the best tone production. So I was very fortunate in that.
So you're growing up, and obviously you have some tremendous teachers. Were there actual musical influences that you had whose style you maybe took, or something from how they played? Who were they?
Well, early on, so by middle school, my mother was playing a lot of records for us in different genres. So it was nothing for us to sit down and listen to the Boston Symphony Orchestra on vinyl,
Hmm.
playing Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony. So yeah, and to this day, I'm like a huge classical music junkie. But I got my concept for sound from listening to stuff like that, listening to performers, who studied and trained on these instruments and had these really crisp, clear tones and had fantastic facility as far as technique. So that was a very motivating thing for me. But also, I had an uncle who was a huge Hubert Laws fan,
Oh, okay.
and he bought me some records. So the first flutist not playing classical music was Hubert Laws for me. And then
Hmm.
once I got that sound and like, wow, he was a classical flutist. So I hear his sound in this jazz vein. I'm like,
Right.
this is me all day long. This is what I want to do. So I started seeking out other artists like that, and that's how I became exposed to Bobby Humphrey, and yeah, exactly. I saw that earlier. So I sought out other players who were doing different things with their classical instrument. I wasn't trying to emulate them at that time, but I knew that those sounds were appealing to me. And so I was really, for me, just trying to perfect my own sound and
Hmm.
find my own voice, even at that young age.
Wow. And with all of that and everything that you've learned, it's really, really good. Um, I read something that says you signed a record deal at 11. Is that a true story?
No,
Yeah.
2011,
Oh,
actually
2011.
2011, I signed with Innervision. It may have been 2013.
Okay.
13. Yeah, I know
Not
no record deals at 11.
okay. I was going to say you're a prodigy then.
Yeah.
Um, so with that, what does you already have developed a style? What does signing with a record label give you that you did not have before?
It really, for me, it gave me a wider audience. It gave me more visibility. The labels are like a machine and they've done it for so long. They know, when you put out a song, what are the entities how do you market the song? How do you sign up for all the PROs so that you're paid every red penny, you know,
Hmm.
your songs get spun. They have a whole machine as far as publicity on social media, getting your information to the audience members via email blasts, and I mean they have it all down. And for an independent artist when I was starting out, I really really needed that, because
Hmm.
I was just putting my music on social media or hiring like smoothjazz.com, who does a great job. Uh,
Hmm.
but I was missing some parts because smooth jazz, while it's global, they aren't really working your records.
Right.
So I had to learn that the machine was like, hey, you need a promoter
Right.
to your records and speak on your behalf, every week. And branding. They taught me about branding and how important that was. So for me, it was hugely beneficial. And I'm so glad I'm with a label like Innervision because there's so many different types of labels. There are
Hmm.
labels who take complete authority over an artist's career. You do what they say do. And then you have labels like Innervision for me, which they still give me creative rights. So I
Mm-hmm.
write what I want to write. I work with who I want to work with. I record with who I want to record with. Now they have a buy-in. I got to convince them, whatever.
Right.
I can still choose that. They allow me to be the artist, and they support what I'm doing. And then in turn, I make them look good. So I
Yes.
put their label on the map as well. So it's a partnership.
Wow. That is. It's interesting to learn the dynamics of independent versus using an actual label, so to speak. The record business, music business, I will say, because we don't play records anymore. It
Mm-hmm.
is such a different animal now as it was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It spins. It's not CDs. It's always one of the conversations I have with artists is, what do you do? Do you have the record label and do you put out a CD, or are you single driven and doing a new single every 6 to 8 weeks or something like that? It's different in every situation. And I just sit back and I do what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what when you say you get to choose whoever you choose, how do you do that? How do you establish that relationship, whether it's Lynn Roundtree or some of the other people that you have talked to?
For me, I'm really strategic with everything that I do. I do a lot of background work. First of all, I want to see the artists out there representing themselves in the best light.
Hmm.
And they are putting out quality product. There's some really, really good artists out there who don't invest in the sound of their records. So it could be a great song, but the production is bad.
Hmm.
You don't think it's not that important to you to have a great mix or a great mastering of. So I'm always listening for quality of the product of the artist I would like to work with. I like working with artists who have a really distinct voice, meaning I don't hear their music on the radio and it sounds like everything that's on the radio.
Right.
Like I want to hear their style. What is it about them? Like I go, oh, that's definitely Lynn, or oh, that is definitely, Michael Broning or Greg Manning or whatever. So I look for that innovative quality in their music. I listen to feedback from our industry on what it's like to work with those people. Because I want to have a positive working relationship. I want to work with somebody that's professional, that meets deadlines, that is a good communicator. So all of those things are important to me because I would want somebody to look for those attributes if they were considering me as a collaborator, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it seems as though you are very in tune with what you want, and you want that other artist to share the same vision that you have, which now gives me a different understanding about how all this works. Speaking of understanding, we're going to take a listen to one of your songs called "Shine" on the Jazz Flyte Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Shine from our guest today, Kim Scott. No relation to me, even though many people have thought, because you can obviously see the resemblance. It just is. It's a natural thing. Um, let's talk about, once again, keep going on the subject of choosing people. Um, how do they know? This has always amazed me, whether it's a producer, engineer, someone who's accompanying you. How do they know your sound? How do they know how to fit in with you? I always find that amazing. And I know you've done some things, and I'm Every Woman, and now for the life of me, I cannot think of the other two young ladies who were on there.
Althea,
Um,
Renee, and Reagan Whiteside.
yeah. How do they know what you want? Because it's your song, it's your production. So how do they fit in?
That's a good question, actually. I never tell musicians or writers that are working with me what to sound like or what to do. I may have a guide as far as the format of the song, like here's the intro and I want, 8 bars of a chorus and I want this and I want you to come in here and you to do this, or we're going to trade fours in the end, or, I may just like that. But when I work with an artist, I'm working with them because I like their voice. I like their intuitiveness. I like their creative being and what they deliver. So I want them to sound like them, you know? So for instance, on I'm Every Woman, some people were like, I don't know if that's gonna work because y'all are all 3 flutists. How are we gonna know who's
Right.
who?
Yeah.
And I said, if you listen, if you're not just, listen to a song and going with the groove, but you actively listen, all 3 of us have different sounds. All 3 of us have a different groove and a vibe. And you can hear who is who. You definitely can hear our tones are even all different. So I told those ladies, I said, I want you to do you. When I say here are your bars, I want you to do Althea. I want you to do Reagan. And when we come together on the choruses, we have distinct parts. Like I actually had it charted out. So we were playing different notes. So it was very colorful and very full. But if you go back and listen to it, you can distinctly hear in the verses who is who if you study.
Now,
Yeah.
do the 3 of you at some point go to lunch, go to dinner, have a conversation, and try to figure all this out, or is it like we're just gonna get in the studio and go?
Well, we were strategic about it because I told you that's how I am. So I was
Right.
like, this is what we're doing. So we have not had a chance to all be together in the present body, but we did get on some Zooms together to talk through my idea and talk through the vision, and then after that it was just phone calls, like, questions about when we trade fours, who's going to do the trade? So we got 3 different trades. How are we going to balance those out? So we have those kind of conversations. But when I do see them on the road, we're very cordial. We're very supportive of one another. Most people would think because we're the only 3 women flutists, solely flutists, making records, that we don't get along or that we shouldn't get along or there should
Right.
be. And it's not like that, because I'm like, again, we all have different styles. We all have different stage presence. We play different types of music even. Althea's stuff is a lot more laid back. It's funky, but it's more laid back.
Mm-hmm.
My stuff is just high energy, funky, but my sound is a little more classical because I mix the classical vibe with jazz. And I would say that Reagan's is a little more spirited, like hers is really just really, really upbeat. And all of it is great. I think they are dynamic women. I champion them. When I see things on social media that they post, I like it. I may even share it. I play their music on my radio show.
Yeah.
So the relationships are solid.
We're going to talk about that radio show, but getting back to this, the 3 women. I talked to a young lady a couple of weeks ago named Carla Leal. She's a bass player. We have up in this area of the country, we're about to have this thing called Women in Jazz. And what is your feeling? Because Carla says, you the woman, she comes to you, you're like her mentor, so to speak. First of all, how does that responsibility feel? But second of all, I, what what do you do with that? How do we get? No, I'm different. I got a whole bunch of female artists that I love, of course, one of which is behind me. Um, but how do you deal with that? How do you handle that? Because it's coming from your peers. And did you have somebody that you could refer to as you were coming along?
I am really honored by it all. Because I'm an editor by profession as well. I'm a natural nurturer.
Mm-hmm.
And I love helping people get to the next level, the next step. Like any knowledge that I have or any knowledge that I can attain is going to be shared.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if it's with someone who plays the same instrument in the same genre. I'm like, we can all learn from each other. If there's something I can share with you that's going to help you, you can have it. So, I get a lot of phone calls from a lot of the musicians in the industry, and especially people in the age group that Carla is in, because they're trying to find their way. They have lots of questions. They've probably had some experiences that are not favorable, or, they want to know how to navigate a situation in the business. And because I'm a little bit, further ahead and have probably had some of those experiences,
Mm-hmm.
I always try to share as much as I can, as much feedback, what has worked for me, what didn't work, what am I going, how is the business looking 10 years from now? What do we need to be doing? So it doesn't bother me when I get the calls and the emails or anything. I welcome that. That to me is how I would, people lifted me up when I was coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I did have mentors that, I never forget when I first started out in jazz, I had a mentor who was like, hey, before you even get started in this, you need to read this book. And it was All You Need to Know About the Music Business by
Mm-hmm.
Donald Cass. And it went through how to pick a manager, how to shop labels or be visible to a label, how to choose a PRO, how to sign up for your royalties so you get your money for streams and for record sales and for spins on the radio, how to write contracts. There was so much in that book, and I never would have known it if that person hadn't sat down and said, before you even form your band, here. And there were people that I could call along the way as well, that always answer the phone. But a lot about this business you have to learn on your own.
What's, and I'm sure you might have a myriad of them. What is the best thing that you've learned so far?
The best thing I've learned all so far is the way you show up in the world is how people know and remember you. So if you are an artist and you want to have a certain image, or you want to have a listener have a certain concept of who you are as an artist, you gotta give them that from the beginning. So you need to focus on your brand. You need to spend money on your imagery, put out good photos, invest in your records that have good sound, because the first song they hear from you is either going to make them a fan
Right.
or
Yeah.
make them not come back.
Right.
And you got to treat every song that you write and record like it's that one song that's going to get you a new fan.
I think the interesting thing is, and I have been a part of this music genre for 40 years, 20 years, being in the middle of it and so forth and so on. And I've come across a lot of artists. And there are two who immediately come to mind. We had an interaction, and I'm a very honest person. How you treat me is how I'm gonna treat you. And the one person asked me a question, and I gave him an honest answer because he's a highfalutin. He played a concert at a little neighborhood club, and he played 52 minutes. I remember like it was yesterday. But in that 52 minutes, he played like 5 songs. Huh? Huh? So he looked at me and said, we're backstage. So what'd you think of the show? I thought you could have played longer, and I thought you could have played a couple of more songs. He actually took a step toward me. Didn't like the answer. Oh yeah. And I'm sorry. I don't. I've done some amazing things, and we won't talk about all of them. But I've met a lot of important people. And when he stepped to me, I'm like, I don't care who you are. If you're going to approach me that way, I'm going to react the way I should react. There was a woman there with me from the radio station who grabbed me and goes, "Don't do this, Darrell." I'm not going to do anything. Um, but then there are others. Um, in Cleveland, we had a thing called the Ohio Valley Cool Jazz Festival. It was in an outdoor facility called Blossom Music Center. I got backstage, and I'm with Ricky Lawson, the late Ricky Lawson, who was with the Yellow Jackets, and a guy had already played was Branford Marsalis. So Branford comes over and goes, "Hey guys, how you doing? What's going on?" He goes, "Let's go out and watch the show." I go, do you really think that you two can sit out in the audience? He goes, what do you mean sit out in the audience? He picked up buckets, the long, tall buckets, and we sat on the side of the stage watching the show. And he said, what do you think? And there are people like that, people I've met doing this. Everybody said, I'll be in town, I'll do this, we have to hook up, we have to do this. Okay, fine. And like I will always say, I'll buy you a cup of coffee because it's safe. But that's the image. You mentioned that what you see is what you get. That's how it works. And everybody ain't like that. It's just not, that's not their personality.
No, unfortunately, they're not. I mean, there are quite a few colleagues that I'm like, oof, you know, turning the fans off, So yeah, I think, if the world in general,
Right. Yes.
kind, and as far as the artist perspective, we have to keep in mind that we are entertainers.
Right. Yes.
Yes, we are musicians and we want to go in and do it for ourselves and play for us. But when we hit that stage, it is our job to transport the listener and make sure they have an experience.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to do a little more than we would normally do. We got to play more songs. We may not have to solo as long as we would like.
Right.
If we want to show versatility or have more contrasting pieces or have an opportunity for dialogue, to talk to the audience.
Yeah.
I think that's really important because an artist really doesn't want to feel like they're a part of the experience.
Right. I get it. So we have talked about I'm Every Woman an awful lot. So I tell you what, why don't we take a listen to it right now? Ladies and gentlemen, that is I Am Every Woman by Kim Scott and a whole bunch of other people that we need to buy all their records, all their music. We need to get it all. I probably shouldn't do this because it's somewhat competition, but you host a show called Kim Scott's Block Party Radio. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Radio was never a desire of mine. My husband had 14 years of experience in the radio business. He was a very popular gospel DJ in our state. And early on in our relationship, he would say to me that when you play songs for me, jazz songs, you always have something really cool to say about it, like telling me something about the audience or the artist or, the title or the style. And he was like, and you always play really good stuff, and he was like, and to be honest, you have a good speaking voice. So
you do.
Well, thanks. He said, I think we should. He said, I want you to come up with 10 songs. I want you to tell me what you would say about these 10 songs. And then we're going to record an hour. And he was like, I think we're just going to shop it around, see, who finds it interesting. They may not, And so he did that. He engineered the show. He produced it, sent it off, and a network immediately picked it up. We were like, so what turned into a 1-hour jazz program in 2015 has now become 8 years later, a 2-hour syndicated show.
Nice.
Plays all over the world on radios, on terrestrial stations and online stations. We call it the hottest jazz party on the airwaves because it's really upbeat. It's really like a jazz block party.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to come in. My goal for this show was to capture younger audiences.
Mm-hmm.
So people were saying, oh man, jazz is for old folks. You got to be 45, 50.
Music for trees.
Yeah. So I have people who email me and they say, my kids cannot wait to listen to this jazz radio program.
Right.
They want a block party radio t-shirt. I've got people in their 20s and 30s that were like, I didn't know jazz could be cool. So I play a little bit of the standards. I play a little Latin jazz. I play some of the stuff that is hot, the top, what you would call the top 10, top 20. I play some independent artists that you don't get to hear very often.
Right.
Their stuff is great. So I do a really good mixture, I think, of representing, all the different facets of jazz.
I always tell people jazz is a really big pool. It's a really big pool. Um, and it's hard to find, I'll say, an avenue or a lane because you can do what we'll call contemporary up-tempo stuff. You can do the really romantic stuff. You can go back and play the standards. You've got Latin jazz, you've got acid jazz, and the art is being able to mix all that together and kind of go from one genre to another genre and have people stay. That's the thing. It's like you can't go from, and I'll just use it as an example, Weather Report's Birdland and say go to something very melodic and romantic by David Sanborn going to, and the acid jazz folks just escape me. But it's that, and that's the art is, and somebody told me this one time. I've been in my car for 40 minutes because I thought the song never ended.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, and then there's that, do you feel this? You do the show, somebody compliments you. Now the next show has to be as good or better. And how do you do that? That's the struggle.
That is a struggle. But my thing is, as long as you stay consistent, because what I loved about you on the first show, give it to them again.
Yeah, right.
That's why they came back to listen.
Right.
And find that place where, you're doing something that they are craving. Maybe you have a segment in your show that's unique or different, or, I don't know what your thing is on your show, but I'm sure you have that thing,
Yeah.
And, I do too. I try to switch it up every year, but, I might have the double play.
Right.
Or Dave Koz has the Uncommon Cause.
Right. Yeah.
So you just have to find that thing that makes your show stand out and is unique to the listeners.
Yeah. I once played, there were 6 versions of Birdland, and I paid them all back to
that.
It was, and I tried to play them in order. So obviously you start with Weather Report, then I think Manhattan Transfer, then Maynard Ferguson, Stanley Turrentine had one, Freddie Hubbard had one, and Buddy Rich had one.
Oh yeah.
And no interruption. It's like, it's 10 o'clock. This is what I'm going to do. And just play them. And
Quincy Jones's version in there?
Quincy's wasn't out at the time.
Oh, okay.
And then once it came out, it's like, so here's the dilemma. Do you play the intro, the rap portion, and then just go to the song? Or do you just play the song part?
Right.
That was the thing.
Yeah.
But it was fun. All right. We what else are you going to do? What else do you have coming up?
So I am working on my 6th album. Yeah, so Magic City Streets is the lead single from the 6th album, which is called Living It Up. I'm about to release the 2nd single, March 22nd, tune that I wrote with Michael Broning, and I'm featuring Jeff Ryan on saxophone, and it is so smooth. In fact, the name of the song is Like Butter.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty hot. So listen out for that, March 22nd. The full album doesn't come out until the top of 25.
Okay.
But also, I've got so many, I'm so blessed to have so many shows through 25. So, for instance, next month, I am in London performing there. I'm performing in Oregon with the symphony because I still perform classically as well. So I'm soloing with the symphony in Oregon. I'm playing Middle C Jazz in North Carolina. But I have so many performances coming up. So people can go to my website and see the whole tour calendar there. And we're constantly adding dates. Or people can follow me on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or anything like that.
Okay, let's talk about these tour dates. Because there's one that's really special to me. You are coming to Cleveland on September 15th. Little known secret, that's 2 days before my birthday. I ain't telling y'all how old I am. I'm not. I'm old. So we'll be looking for you in Cleveland. It's at Voinovich Park. That's what I remember.
Everyone's favorite hot sauce festival.
Yes. Are you the only artist that will be there?
No, they have a whole jazz concert planned for that festival. So I'm not sure who the other artists are. I think maybe Michael Fields Jr. is on there. But it should be a pretty good lineup. But hey,
Okay. Well, when you come here,
come on out.
I'll let you know. I will come out. I'll wave or do something. I'll wear my shirt that says "chill."
Okay.
But something. Kim, this is great. It is great to learn about people that I have not known anybody or known anything about. Magic City Streets is just wonderful. It's downloaded to my playlist so that sometimes when I sit in my office, I just play music. It was on there a couple of days ago, and I'm like, I gotta listen to this. I appreciate the time. Best of luck. We will keep you in mind. Like I said, forward with me stuff. We will pass it on to our listeners and our followers, and we will go from there. And I'll find the block party and I'm gonna give it a listen, and I might even give you some suggestions. Just
Hey, I'm always open.
okay.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Not a problem. Greatly appreciated, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Jazz Flyte Podcast. I am Darrell Scott. We will talk to you next week. Thank you for tuning in to the Jazz Flyte Podcast. I hope you enjoy these stories and soulful melodies that groove through the doors of time. If you want to stay connected with the latest updates and episodes, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. Until next time, I'm Darrell Scott.